The 2025 Detroit Baseball Dinner took place on January 25th at Andiamo's Riverfront in downtown Detroit. The evening featured a Q&A session with current Tiger reliever Tyler Holton, former Tigers pitcher and current broadcaster Dan Petry, and former front office executive Mike Smith. The event was emceed by retired Detroit News baseball writer and dinner founder Lynn Henning. Let's take a look at the 2025 Detroit Baseball Dinner.
Do the Dodgers have an advantage with their pipeline they have to Japan right now over other teams?
Go ahead, guys. Mike?
The Dodgers have an advantage in so many facets of the game. If you guys recall in the late 90s, the Yankees were dominating baseball on the field with their money in the minors, and the next collective bargaining agreement that came up was a huge fight among the clubs over the unfairness of it. And I crossed over in my mind this offseason to the Dodgers are now on an uneven playing field, and we may see the other clubs turn on them in the next collective bargaining agreement and start to hash out ways that it could be more fair for the clubs. They have an advantage in all facets. And they're really smart, which is scary. They're not just rich, but they're one of the smartest teams I've ever seen. What are all the deferred payments about, Tyler asks. That's a good question, and I'll get into some boring contract language. The competitive balance tax has tiers, and the first tier, you're only charged, I think, 20% extra on every dollar. The next tier, you're charged 50%. You start losing draft picks and things like that. And the more you spend, when you spend $380 million, you're spending like $100. If a guy costs $20 million to sign, the Dodgers actually have to pay $40 million, $20 million to the player and $20 million to all the other clubs. So deferred payments let them get the max, like for instance, Ohtani signed, he gets $70 million a year in value, but because of the present value, the Dodgers only are charged as if it's a $46 million contract because of the present value of a dollar goes down over time. So the Dodgers are giving the player what they want, and at the same time, they're getting charged a lot less in this competitive balance tax by doing these shenanigans. Good question.
Question? Yes. Yeah, David.
This is for Tyler. Would you rather be a starter or an opener like you're doing now if it weren't up to your manager, if it were up to you?
If it was up to me, I would not change a thing personally. I take pride in being able to pitch at any time. Oh, heads up. Thank goodness nobody was sitting.
We haven't had an earthquake in a while.
But no, I would not change a thing. It's my favorite thing is closing out a game. I think it's the coolest moment. The fans are on their feet. It's the loudest moment of the game. That video that they played at the end of the ALDS at home, I mean, that was the coolest baseball moment of my life, and I'm going to remember that forever. So I would not change what I do. I think someone like me, I've even read an article of a AL Central coach saying it's difficult to do this, and it's not many people want to sign up for it, and I think it's kind of hard to prepare for someone like me. At least I think it's difficult because I could come in the middle of the inning or in the middle of the game and throw 2 to 3 innings. I could finish the game, and so if I've had games where I come in 4th inning and then they already burn their lefty because I'm coming in to face them, and it's a big moment, and their skipper benches that guy, and he can no longer get any more at-bats in the 7th, 8th, or 9th because now they're already onto their bench players. But no, I would not change a thing.
Question, please. Come on, gang. We got the best of the best up here. All the way back, I can't see, but please let's hear. I'm sorry, could we get that repeated? Oh, the impact of Kerry Carpenter.
When he came back, the offense really turned around and kind of the metrics, but still he got pinch hit for a little bit, kind of the longer term view of Carey.
Yeah, I could definitely speak to what he means to this team. He's an energy plug that, as you could see, he came back from the IL stint and immediately just came in clutch, hit some home runs, and he's a whatever goes in between here. I mean, he joins the clubhouse big time, and I think for our lineup's sake, at the end of the season last year, he was a big spark plug. I mean, I don't know if we needed another left-handed hitter, but we needed another guy that can hit some home runs, and so he was somebody that filled in that role. I mean, seeing him and his stats, his OPS, whenever he's healthy and he's in the lineup, I mean, it's one of the best in the MLB, and he's right behind Judge and Soto's and Otani's. He's like a top 10 OPS player, so if we can keep him in the lineup, I think we can do some special things.
Yes, all the way back, folks. Just grab a microphone and let's hear what you might want to know here from the gentleman.
What about the catcher?
Could you repeat that?
I mean, I'm not the one throwing to them, so that would be a Tyler or Dan question, given his perspective. The WAR. Oh yeah. You're right. The catchers were the best in baseball by WAR, and full credit, they grabbed Carson Kelly in 23 off waivers, rehabbed his bat just enough, and have worked with him after getting over his, I think, wrist injury. And between him and Rogers, gosh, by almost all measurements, both of them were one of the best catchers across the board. And other clubs had like Patrick Bailey as the best catcher in baseball, but maybe his backup's not as good. And the Tigers had both those guys and Dingler, who essentially is a Jake Rogers clone in a lot of ways, doing great work. So there was no step down no matter who they put back there. And even though, again, this is measuring things relative to baseball, even though on the surface their offense didn't look that good, the catching position's hitting level is so low right now in baseball that those guys were essentially average hitters in a lot of ways compared to their position. So you pair that with elite defense, and they were one of the best teams in baseball from a total package perspective.
Yeah, please, Dan. That's what I wanted you to get in on.
Yeah, just a little bit about Jake Rogers, and certainly Tyler can speak to him, but I just think about Tarek Skubal, Triple Crown winner, Cy Young, best pitcher in baseball, and Jake Rogers caught every pitch, I believe it was, for him. And Tarek Skubal was the first one to say, hey, yeah, I had a really good year, but there's no way that I could have done it without Jake Rogers. The other thing about Carson Kelly and Jake Rogers, too, is us media guys, I mean, that locker room is their house. And, we're allowed to come in there and, for an hour, and, it's like, we're trying to get a little bit of information, but you got to respect what, us coming in there every day, and they don't want to, oh God, here he comes again. Those catchers were there all the time. They're there all the time to just try to get that little nugget of what makes Tyler Holton so tough? What is it about him? Why can he be successful against just as much against right-handers as left-handers? And so those guys are really fun to get in there. And, certainly they have a lot of work, but you can say, hey, Jake, I got a couple quick questions right here. And, oh, certainly, come on over, Dan. And they'll answer them. They've always got a little bit of time. And if you're ever looking for somebody, that to get an answer or a good scoop from, it's those catchers. And Tyler, I know Tyler, when I go in there, about the only thing I do to him is I'll just go give him a fist bump. They got that game on the line. It's just that night. They're focused and everything. That's their home, and that's about it. It's just, hey, go get them, Tyler. Keep up the good work. That's about it. Just make your rounds and just give them that 5. But those catchers, they're always right there for that really good answer for you.
That's why Dan Petry's here tonight, and that kind of insight. I must tell you, for 20 years, I knew that this guy was in need of being in a Tigers broadcast booth. So frankly did his bosses. There was a problem with a lifelong contract or a lifelong promise, and Dan would have been in the booth on a regular basis many years in advance. Finally, things cluttered, or decluttered, I should say, and on top of that, they expanded. Well, he got his role, and so whether he's hosting at night with John Keating or whether he's doing, as he really does well, his analyst role in the booth, Dan Petry finally has been cultivated and finally is enriching this Tigers baseball audience. But I want to tell you, it was a lot of years when some of us privately were trying to get this guy in there, and they wanted to get him in there, and it was just blocked. That's all I've got to be honest and straight with you about that. That's what kept him away for so long. It was a little bit sad, but it's been remedied beautifully. One other thing, and I'm going to head off a question with this thought. I hear it all the time, the Tigers are cheap, the Tigers are cheap. I have no problem spending Chris Ilitch's money. But think about this in two ways. Why was the team good last year? Good young talent. Is good young talent going to raise their payroll? No, it's going to leave it down there. That's not the reason you're bringing on good young talent. Payroll is incidental to the fact you want talent to win games. You want to add complementary help through free agency, but it's got to fit. The contract's got to fit. The position's got to fit. You can't blockade some young player, Colt Keith, who needs to be in there. Fans, and I'm going to say, I don't think this thing through enough. There's another second facet. Mike can talk to this. 2000, what did everybody want the Tigers to do? Spend that $148 million on Juan Gonzalez. Please, sign Juan. What are you waiting for? $148 million for 8 years. He turns it down. Mike Smith is going to tell you right now what would have happened had Juan Gonzalez signed that contract.
Miguel Cabrera would not be a Tiger in the Hall of Fame. And this is really true. And Pudge and Maglia would not have signed. Like, we had 5-year payroll projections, and I have old files still of what this club would have looked like in 2004, 2005, 2006 with Juan Gonzalez's salary. It would have been there through 2007. So think about it. The 06 season wouldn't have happened. Pudge wouldn't have happened. Maglia wouldn't have happened. You're spot on, Lynn.
Thank you. I mean, not enough fans think about this. If you have a backloaded contract like they've got with Javi, you're not seeing who the Tigers can't make a bid for now because of the $80 million that they owe him. You're not going to see who they can't get on the back 3 years of Bregman's contract because of what they're going to owe. It doesn't mean you don't make a rational, intelligent bid to sign them, of course, but it's got to be just that, and too often it isn't. I don't think enough people think that through. Questions?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. We primed the pump here. In order, just wherever you think, please help us, please, with the microphone, please.
I respect your point about the fans, but the fans do understand that, okay? You have fans here who have been around for a long time. To your statistics about going to 23 and 24 runs scored, that they're about the same, that's true. We benefited from other teams doing worse. For everybody here who's been a fan for a long time, we were very fortunate, thanks to the gentleman up there, our bullpen was incredible, was untouchable, okay? Again, as a longtime fan, we know we can't count on that year in, year out. We also were beneficial that Minnesota took a dive. All right, if Minnesota had played 500 ball, we wouldn't be talking about the playoffs. If Minnesota had played 450 ball, we wouldn't be talking about the playoffs. The trick is the Tigers do need another bat. We have Kerry Carpenter. We are extremely left-handed. Not arguing we have to go spend Mr. Ilitch's money on Bregman, but if you want to talk about money, do you know how much money he's brought in from 3,000 butts sitting in seats at Comerica Park? $3 million. That's a lot of butts. That'll bring a lot of money in. The Tigers do need to get another bat. I'm hoping they do. We've got a little bit of time. Ha-Seong Kim would be great, but he's not going to be back till about July. That's if everything goes well with his recovery. Okay, whether it's Bregman or whatever, the Tigers do need to bring some more offense in. We're not going to be as fortunate as we were last year. And that's something that the ownership needs to understand. Mr. Ilitch can spend his money however he wants to spend it. But if they're not going to do anything about the offense, because As we were told, they needed to have the core. I think we can all agree the core is there now, including that gentleman right there. The management and the leadership owes it to that gentleman right there, and if they want to sign Tarek Skubal to a long-term contract, is to show that they're serious about winning and winning now. Maybe we do have a dynasty. Dynasty is a term that's thrown around way too easy in life. Okay, we have a lot of great prospects, and a prospect is just a prospect until proven. The Tigers have a rare opportunity right now with a bat or two and maybe Flaherty, we could win the Central Division. If they're planning on going just the way they are right now, very likely it's going to be a very long season.
Well, I'm going to meet you on two fronts there, and I'll let the other guys talk to it. They know they need another bat. You know it. I know it. Everyone here knows it. They are not unaware of that, but there was a crazy market for the first couple of months. My position on this, from 50 years of covering this stuff, you better wait to spring camp to see what your roster's like. If you're going to make your roster before the Super Bowl's played, you're probably cutting yourself off from a few weeks of shopping and bartering and trading. They'll add bats. The question becomes, is it smart to add Bregman when he's turned down 6 for $156 million? There is a point of sanity there that needs to be discussed. I don't care if Chris Elliott spends $1 billion. They've spent $500 million in the last 10 years on Jordan Zimmerman, Justin Upton, Prince Fielder, a Victor Martinez extension, and Javier Baez. What has that gained them? There is a point of rational thought about contracts and spending. And for that reason, I'd be very discreet about that. And I think that only pays to the ultimate dividend of what you're talking about, a better team, better crowds, and better baseball. That's just my thought.
You know, I'll throw out there, and this, I know it's crazy, but I mean, they did sign Gleyber Torres, right? So there's your right-handed, one of the right-handed bats. Slide Colt Keith over. Mike talked about Spencer Torkelson. There's a big bat. He's one season removed from 31 home runs, okay? He's already put the pressure on him. Scott Harris did, saying, you need a big offseason. You got to come up and you've got to have a big offseason. You've got to have a big spring training if you're going to make that club. And if he becomes the guy that you think he's going to be, along with Gleyber Torres, there's two of your right-handed bats. I know this is going to sound crazy. Tyler is right next to this guy all the time. But I was talking to a gentleman before. I had hip replacement surgery a year ago, and I could barely walk before I had it. I was worried that somebody, if they went and touched me, I was going to fall over, okay? That's how bad it was. Now, Javi Baez, okay, granted, you throw the ball in the other batter's box, he takes a lot of heat for swinging at those sliders, right? What happens if that hip is really causing him a lot of those issues at the plate? I don't know, but what happens if it is? I mean, are you just going to ready to just say, you know, let's buy him out? You know, let's spend $75 million or whatever it is. You ready to just, you got to pay him anyway. Let's just let him go. Okay, so we'll pay. I mean, or he has that, and now all of a sudden his hip is good, his back is good, and now he can swing the bat a little bit. You know, you weren't even counting on him. What happens if that happens? You've seen him play shortstop. He's still a highlight reel at shortstop, making these fantastic plays. So you know he can move around defensively. What happens if that was really an issue for him? And all of a sudden that is kind of cleared up and he starts coming back. These guys have a lot of pride, a lot of pride. You think a guy like that finished second in the MVP voting back in 2015 or whatever it was, just all of a sudden says, I don't care. I'm going to go. I don't care if I embarrass myself every time I'm out on a baseball field. No, impossible. And he has so much pride that I know that hopefully that was an issue for him. And that hip and that back all of a sudden come together. I know it's wishful thinking, but are you sure that is not the case? I mean, I'm not sure that's not the case. That's what I think is just an interesting thing to find out when spring training opens.
Good points. Mike, you had a thought on
that? Just quickly on the Bregman thing. I absolutely think the Tigers need another bat. If Bregman would sign for $3 at $90 million, I would sell all the pizzas myself. But Bregman's not going to sign here for less than 6 years. If Bregman's going to sign a short-term deal and he has to come out again as a free agent again, he's going to go to a Boston or Chicago or somewhere else because it's to his best. It's in his best interest to have good stats, whether he's the same kind of player or not. He needs those counting stats. He needs the 25 extra home runs at Fenway versus the 13 home runs at Comerica. So Tigers lose almost every tiebreaker for Bregman. The only way he comes here is every other club doesn't want to spend even short-term money on him, and the Tigers are the only team that will. I just find the odds of that very low. So that's why I'm like a Kim. And to Dan's point, I'm very worried about, like, if Baez shows up and he's healthy and Sweeney turns out to be everything that he was last year and more, they're covered at short. That's a great platoon. But what's the downside? The downside is Baez shows up, his hip's still bothering him. Sweeney's strikeout issues are, he needs another year or two, and they get nothing from shortstop next year. And that is unconscionable if they don't find a backup, and right now they haven't done that yet.
Question, please.
Oh, you're going to hold it? Hold on. Hi. My name is Barb. I pride myself on being one of the biggest female Tiger fans in the state. Tyler, congratulations. What I want to know is, I know the Lion players, they play for Campbell. They love him, love him, love him. How are the Tigers toward AJ? Is that something you can talk about?
For sure. I think the sports at least are different with the head coaching position. I know Dan Campbell, I've heard a lot of his speeches and pep talks, and he's very fiery and emotional. And that sport is very aggressive and fiery and emotional once a week. Baseball is a bit different, and I think AJ, he ever since day one of spring training, he believes in us and we believe in each other, and he's been there before. He's won a World Series. So we trust him and we trust the process that he has, and he's from the top down. He's got the coaches around him to build what we need. And I think as players, I kind of joke with AJ a lot about how at this point with all the analytics, like we just need to be robots, because he's plugging us into the pieces and the puzzles of each game. Like it's just every game is a puzzle, especially take me for example. Hey, like you can go 1.2 innings today. Is that going to be valued most in the first inning and 2/3 of the second, or in the 8th, and then you throw three outs in the 9th? Like at what point is each piece going to be valued the most? And as long as he knows that I'm going to be the same player each and every day, then he knows he knows where to use me. And I think from a player perspective, we all started to buy into it there at the end of the year, and we picked each other up, and I mean, we went on a pretty historic run there, so we believe in him.
Yeah, please, Mike, go ahead. Thanks, Barb.
Tyler and Kerry Carpenter are perfect examples of how amazing AJ is at buy-in. Tyler started every inning but the 4th last year, 1 through 10. Baseball does not economically reward that. Baseball rewards 9th inning and saves. But every player on this team bought into their role. And on the surface, Tyler, I would say, like, well, why is he doing that? Well, he just said it. AJ is giving him every chance to succeed. He put up the best numbers he could because AJ gave him every chance by putting him in the best role where he's going to have his best chances. Same with Kerry Carpenter. Kerry Carpenter was behind, would you say, Judge and Ohtani? Like third in Soto, like third in baseball in OPS versus righties. And he had, 31 plate appearances versus lefties all year long. He's not that bad versus lefties as he was last year. But Kerry Carpenter knows it's not a slight on him when he's not facing a lefty. It's because it's a team effort, and there's some righty on the bench who has a better chance to succeed. So AJ has really sold the story. And I'm not in the clubhouse. This is what I'm seeing. You guys could say more. But from my perspective, the buy-in is unbelievable. It's really amazing.
Good stuff. Question? Yes, Nick. Oh, we got one over there. Please. Whoever's got the mic, question?
This is really more for Tyler. So in my opinion, for what it's worth, the pitch clock probably saved Major League Baseball. Some of the other rule changes could take or leave, not that big a deal. And then I think a month ago, the commissioner floated a golden at bat or something, some crazy thing. The MLB Players Association is an extremely strong union. How do you guys view when somebody floats these changes? And let's go back to the pitch clock, because you're a pitcher. What was your opinion when you heard it, and what was the opinion of the rest of the staff and other players?
At first, I did not enjoy it. I experienced it in the minor leagues before a lot of these major league teammates of mine. So the first impression, I think there's always growing pains with anything that is changed. I think from the player perspective and the MLBPA perspective, for that matter, we're still trying to keep the traditional baseball game sacred, and I don't think Manfred cares very much about that. I think he wants to appeal to the fans with all due respect, but he doesn't survey players, he only surveys fans. So that's where you get a lot of these rule changes stems from that. So you can just have Shohei Ohtani hit back-to-back if you want to, or those ideas come available. But for that, I am completely against the golden bat, whatever rule was proposed. But yeah, for a lot of these rule changes, I assume this is public knowledge, but they can do whatever they want. We have, like, let's just call it 5 votes, and the MLB has 12 votes, and then it's going to go to an auction, or it's going to go to a vote. If the players say we don't want the pitch clock, and then the owners say they do, then the owners get what they want. So there it is.
Yeah, Nick, you got one.
Okay, so this is for, I guess, Tyler and Dan and Mike. But so last year, Tyler, you did, to me, really amazing stuff. Like, you were able to start, you pitched in the middle innings, you guys were on base, you came in closed games. So specifically, and then Dan can speak to some of this, because I know, Dan, you were coming up, you started, you came out, you started, you were to go through 6, 7 innings. That was your job. So how does your mentality come into that, like, to be able to say, hey, you're starting today, you got to get the first 6 outs or whatever, 4 outs, whatever it is, or you got bases loaded, you got to come in, how's your mentality? Or you're coming in the ninth, you got to close it. How's your mentality change for those things to be able to specifically speak to that?
I used to be a starter. A lot of the guys in the bullpen, I don't know if this is known, but a lot of the guys in the major leagues, whether you're a starter or a reliever in the major leagues, most of the time you were a starting pitcher at some point in your career, probably recent career. And I was a starting pitcher all the way until I got into like AA, and then I even dabbled a little bit in AAA, still as a starting pitcher. But whenever I would go back to the opener role, I would kind of mentally go back into my starting routine, which was not really where I thrived, right? Because then I started moving to the bullpen and my career really took off. And so what I had to do was trick myself into thinking this is a relief appearance, you know, this is the 8th or the 9th inning. And so once I was feeling like I was closing the game, that's really what helped me feel like my back's against the wall. You know, if I put up this 0, we win this game. Granted, it's the first inning, I'm going to get a handshake, and then we're going to hit in the bottom half of the first, and my day's done. But for me, that was what carried me through those outings. And then sometimes I'm expected to go 2 or even 3 innings as an opener. But I think you kind of spoke on this mentally. It could have been you, Lynn. But mentally, that's what I had to learn, was to treat each outing as, you know, this is the 9th inning. You know, this is a do or die situation.
Great questions, everybody. Just a few more. Microphone so everybody can hear. Rich?
I got a question for Mike. You talked about war. Is there an analogous computation for calculating the war, so to speak, for a manager? Because I think AJ has got to be the +4, except for a couple times during the season where I wondered what he was doing, and I don't have all the facts. Boy, I think he pulls all the right levers.
There's not an analogous stat. You have to break down a bunch of individual stats. One-run games are largely luck, but if you're a good manager and you have a good bullpen, you tend to overperform. I don't know how much, this year, I was literally just tracking where the Tigers were in pinch hit at bats during the year. And they started out like first place for the first 3 months, and I think they finished second. And like, AJ clearly is pushing the right buttons. He got a guy fired in Seattle. He beat Houston by outmanaging the guy. He's doing a wonderful job, and it's just a hard thing to judge. The manager, what he does in the dugout is actually only part of his job. Don't get your pitchers hurt, handle the media, keep a clean clubhouse, and if there's, for whatever reason, a problem player, don't let that player infect the rest of the players. That's like a lot of the manager's job is a lot of the babysitting. And they're all great managers at the major league level in one form or another. So even if you're great among the great, it's probably not worth that much because most of them are doing a pretty darn good job. Now, I think AJ had an exceptional year and perhaps stood above, but that could also be a fluke. Maybe next year, everybody starts being copycats to some of the stuff he's doing, and he loses that marginal edge. People are quick in this game to copy each other when they see something going well. So I think he had a great year, and we'll see how repeatable it is next year.
Please, Dan.
You know, I just out of curiosity, you mentioned something about, in talking about WAR and how somebody gets paid, why, what Tyler does, it just doesn't jump off to get him big numbers. How are Major League Baseball players paid now? I mean, it's, a starting pitcher can be 6 and 10. Is it by WHIP? Is it ERA? It's not necessarily innings. I guess a little bit of it is innings, but how is, in a hitter, it was like a 300 hitter. Luis Arias should be making $30 million. He's not. He's getting traded, winning batting titles all over the place. And, you can hit 220 and hit 25 home runs and drive in 80. What are some of the big characteristics now and how players get paid?
That's a really good point. And I left 9 years ago, and you're seeing trends. So when I left, Felix Hernandez had just won a Cy Young with like a 14-13 record. And you were seeing the transition away from the raw stats and a deeper understanding. And you're seeing it in the Hall of Fame vote. The vote and the way the game is measured, it's starting to dig in. It's not just saying, well, Tyler doesn't have 22 saves, although saves are still one of the anachronisms that are overpaid. But it's recognizing that a guy like Tyler, who's throwing 94 innings with a 2-something ERA and coming into high leverage situations, you're seeing that word leverage and the way they measure leverage being far more important through like the arbitration process and everything like that. In fact, were you ARB eligible this year? Next year, okay. That'll be enlightening. A lot of the ways that people are talking about it, you're still seeing RBI, for instance, is no longer something people really pay for. Luis Arias, why is he underpaid? Or why isn't he in more demand? Bad defense and he doesn't walk. So he's hitting 330, but he has no walks and no power. So a guy who's hitting 220 but is walking 80 times a year and hitting 30 bombs, that's being recognized. When Parker Meadows goes out and puts up a 4-WAR season because he's the best center fielder in baseball, baseball now recognizes that and is starting to pay for it. You probably have an insight of this that I don't because I've been out so long.
I just always think of starting pitchers. You always the game is made. You're trying to win the game. So as a starting pitcher,
right? Well, look at the Dodgers.
You're paid to win. And that's how you got paid. Was hey, I was 18 and 10. Well, that's how you got paid.
So the Dodgers won 98 games this year. The Dodgers had 2 guys pitch 100 innings, one at 140 and one at 130. So if you're not even going 5 innings a game, you're not going to rack up those wins. And baseball's recognizing that and moving away. And you're seeing guys like Tyler Glasnow and Blake Snell sign for enormous sums of money, even though they're only being counted on for 100 to 140 innings at a time, and they're not going to rack up the big wins. The Hall of Fame's going to have a reckoning with how they look at, once you get past Justin Verlander and Scherzer and Greinke, the next generation of starters that's only throwing 5 innings at a time instead of 7 innings at a time like you, Dan. and therefore they're not even going to hit 200 wins in a career. Those guys are probably going to be Hall of Famers in the context of their career, the best ones of them. But within the baseball's just changed so much.
So, I mean, whip, it's not like whip is important.
Yeah, whip is very important. I think, and Tyler says this all the time, don't walk guys, throw strikes, strike guys out. Like, what are the things a pitcher controls? Walks, strikeouts, somewhat home runs. What else do you control? That's about it. So, and it bears out over a long period of time. Guys who strike out a lot of guys and don't walk anybody over a period of seasons are Tarik Skubal or Tyler Holton. Like, he threw 170 innings the last 2 years. That's a starter's workload, and he has the really low walk totals and the good strikeout totals. That's how you have value.
I feel like for me personally, I've found success kind of like Dan Petry was saying, like back old school ways. You're playing the game. You're not necessarily chasing stats. You're just trying to help the team win. You know, at the end of the day, you're either winning or losing. And I think on the major league level, that's where you start to see that kind of come back into reality. Through the minor league system, you chase the analytical numbers. Like, so that's why you hear, oh, this guy in AA, he hits 480-foot home runs. This guy in AAA, he throws 101 miles an hour. Like, he has a 20-inch breaking curveball. He has, like you hear all these analytics because you assume he's just going to absolutely shove in the major leagues or absolutely hit nukes in the major leagues. But that's not always the case because the average talent is tremendous from major leagues and AAA. So I think at some point you get those players in the major league level, and then you got to revert back to, okay, what works? Does the 20-inch curveball that you throw into the dirt repeatedly, and now these major league hitters are not swinging at it anymore because they're just more experienced, it's not going to work anymore. So then you go back down to AAA and you figure out how to throw that pitch for a strike. So you have to end up playing the game again. But I think what gets paid, at least from players, what we hear is home runs for hitters and strikeouts for pitchers, because you give me the worst situation as a pitcher, bases loaded, nobody out. What's the best way to get out of this inning? Oh, obviously strike everyone out. You know, strikeout, strikeout, strikeout. It's like, okay, is that the most efficient way to get out? Maybe not, because that's at least 9 pitches right there. I mean, obviously you can get a weak contact double play ball. You know, you throw it back to home plate, he throws it to first, and you can get a ground ball pop up, and you know, it could be 2 pitches and you're out of the inning. There's a lot of different ways to get out of tough jams as a pitcher. Now, as a hitter, the easiest way to score a run is to hit a home run. So you don't need any other player to get on base. You don't need to work a walk and then you run 90 bases, steal a base. You know, so like, I think the easiest way to get paid is to literally hit home runs and strike people out and do it a lot. But it's the most difficult thing to do in both aspects of the game. So for someone like me, I'm not too worried about trying to necessarily achieve all of those goals. I'm just trying to find other ways to create an edge and be different than my other teammates or opponents, even just to help find a way to win. And I think that's where there is creating some value with these leverage consideration of, okay, this team's winning. How are they winning? Okay, well, they're piecing it together. That's pretty important, you know. And so I think we're seeing an new age from old school. Wins are really important, and then now it was analytics, home runs and strikeouts are important, and now it's like, okay, Emmanuel Clase is pretty good. He doesn't really strike that many people out. So is he that good or is he not that good? You know, so I think there's a lot of different, Mariano Rivera, for example, he didn't strike out more people than innings pitched. Best closer of all time. So I think you're starting to see, like, okay, maybe there's more to it than just strikeouts and home runs.
Can you talk about soft contact as a repeatable skill?
Oh, great.
Soft contact, that's a area that I know about. So that's one thing that I think I can control. So I had a pitching coach who really helped me mentally move on pitch to pitch. There's only one thing that I can control, and it's throwing the pitch before I let it go. As soon as I let it go, I can't control whether he swings at it, misses it, hits it, home run, 100 miles per hour, exit velo. There's so many things that I can't control once I let go of the pitch. So all I can do is execute it, right? Now, if I'm going to execute a pitch not right down the middle I probably have a good chance of missing the barrel of the bat. And that's really all I'm trying to do, is either miss the bat or induce soft contact, which can now give my defense a really good chance to make a play. I don't always expect my defense to make a play. Typically, I get frustrated if I ever have to do this. Because I don't know where it's going. I mean, our defense shifts every batter, every pitch. We're shifting, so I don't always know exactly where they are, and I'm amazed whenever they're right behind me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, thanks for standing right behind me. Like, who knew he was going to hit it right there? But anyways, I don't always expect for the 110 miles per hour line drive that's one hopper to the shortstop to be made. That's my fault. I shouldn't have thrown it right down the middle, right? So if I'm able to execute my pitch, throw something that's uncomfortable for the hitter to be able to at least not crush the baseball, I think I can take ownership of I did my job, and then now I'm counting on my defense to do their job. But again, at the end of the day, stats will say that's probably not that great of a pitcher because now he's relying on his defense to help him out to secure the out. But my argument against that would be these are Major League Baseball players. You hit the ball on the ground, you hit the ball in the air, you're probably out. So you're just trying to limit hard contact.
I know we could go to midnight. How about one more, and we'll call it a beautiful night.
All right, I got a quick.
Norm, two more then. Ahead of Norm.
Steve. All right,
Steve.
I'm right here. All right, so I got.
Oh, Steve, I'm sorry.
So I got a question for the four of you.
Sure, Steve.
I mean, I'm an out-of-towner.
Steve.
I live in New Jersey. Question for you, a diehard Tiger fan. Who would you guys say, and I'm going to give you the answer when you're done, who would you guys say was the best free agent signing of the Tigers in 2024?
Who wants to handle it? Best free agent signing for 2024.
24. Yeah, it's for last year. The last year's team, 2024. Who was our best free agent signing?
I got an answer.
Okay.
He got traded in July. Not Flaherty. I mean, not just Flaherty. I assume Flaherty is the obvious.
Well, no, it's not. You're wrong.
You're going to. I knew you're going to say Carson Kelly.
You're wrong again. Strike two.
Go ahead, Steve.
All right, I'm going to tell you it was Jason Benetti. Jason Benetti was the best. And let me tell you.
Leave it to Steve Harrison.
Let me tell you, when Peaches and him were in the broadcast booth, it is TV gold. You guys are absolutely. We are so lucky as fans to listen to you guys.
No, that's so nice of you to say. Trust me, it's all Jason. He takes me to some other thing, and I don't even know who's in there.
I don't know who brings who out, but
he's unbelievable.
When you
and
guys
I'm just
are out
lucky
there,
to be a part of it.
You guys are the best. I mean, when I get my wife to watch the game, that's saying something. I'm telling you, you guys are absolutely fantastic.
Steve, I'll credit the Tigers because they knew they had to enhance the TV and radio experience. Boy, did they.
They did.
Not only with this guy, but Dirks has worked out really, really well, as we all know. Anyway, that's been an upgraded product, but leave it to Steve Harrison to come up with that one. Nice work. Hey, Norman, you got one, and we'll get out of here.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Norm.
Can you drop a couple names of our prospects?
Oh.
Some that can't miss.
Thanks for the question, because that's really obviously where I emphasize right now in this alleged retirement of mine. But they've got, if you'll notice one thing, 10 out of the top 20 of the 50 Tigers prospects that we listed last month were Latin players. So things have improved markedly on that front. You're going to see next spring, and I emphasize the spring of 2026, you're going to see Kevin McGonigal and Max Clark go to spring camp, in my estimation. I believe McGonigal will make the team coming out of camp next year. That's tall cotton, but you're talking about an extraordinary young hitter. How they work him into the shortstop, second baseman mix, worry about that then. Kevin McGonigal has some of the best bat-to-ball skills we will have seen in a Tigers prospect in memory. That's how good he is. Is he going to hit 35 home runs? No. His hitting skills are truly elite, and keep an eye on him. Max Clark is who they knew they were getting 2 years ago. He's the all-purpose talent on a supreme level. Again, he's not going to hit 30 bombs. He's not going to hit 330. But by the time you factor in the hitting, reasonable power, which will only increase, he's got some size and muscle for a kid who just turned 20. You're going to see him make a difference with the speed, the defense, everything else Mike was alluding to. Those guys for sure. And then there's the two that Mike and I talk about, these two guys all the time, the two young Latin stars. Josue Brasino, whether he's a catcher, first baseman, yet to be determined, probably a first baseman, an absolute stud hitter. And I mean premium. The other guy, of course, they got in the trade for Flaherty. They got Lorenzo, yeah. And he is going to be something. He is a switch hitter and a catcher who's going to stay at catcher. You're going to see him make a difference very, very soon in terms of this team's profile. Norman, that's just a small list, but this farm has completely turned around. That is the reason they didn't win for 40 years. It has nothing to do with free agency or payroll or anything like that. It's the minor leagues had to change. Their talent in the front door had to change and alter markedly, and that's done so. Folks, just like Mike was saying, you make the difference in baseball. You're the reason that people have jobs in baseball. You're the reason there's a following. You're the reason that baseball in Detroit for 125 years has been a bedrock obsession and presence. And you're the reason that this thing called the Detroit Baseball Dinner continues to evolve and continues to be a great time, filled with friendship and with a love for this marvelous game. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you next year.